What if all this talk about emotional analytics, the stuff creeping into hiring and everywhere else, what if it didn't have to feel so invasive?
Hmm.
That's really the question that jumped out at me from Diedrich Byrne's podcast, Digital EQ Reimagined.
Right?
He actually did a whole episode, number 8, focusing on what he's calling emotional data do-gooders. People, companies, movements choosing a better way.
Exactly. Instead of dwelling only on the, let's say, the scary side of emotional data, Diedrich spotlights those who treat it like a sacred signal. That's his term.
I like that, sacred signal.
Yeah. So for this deep dive, we're basically using his list from that episode. We want to see who these do-gooders are and, maybe more importantly, why he picked them. What principles are they following?
And this is your shortcut, really, to get Diedrich's take. He's not saying it's a complete list of everyone doing good work,
Definitely not.
but it's a curated set,
Mhm.
examples that show different ways to do it right, and we'll kind of look at them using the questions Diedrich himself used.
Okay, like what?
Well, things like, are they asking for consent or just assuming? Are they grabbing minimal data or building these huge emotional dossier?
Nausea, yeah.
Is the goal to empower you, the user, or is it maybe manipulation? How clear are they being? Like, really clear? And does their whole approach show they actually get emotional nuance?
Those are some solid questions.
Mm.
So where does Diedrich start?
He kicks off with Mozilla.
Firefox.
Right, most people know the browser. But Diedrich digs deeper into their whole mission. This idea of an internet where users actually come first.
Yeah, he has that great quote, Mozilla's proof that you can be both powerful and principled.
That's the one.
What really stands out, I think, and what Diedrich highlights is how long they've been pushing for transparency, for open standards.
Yeah.
It makes them a real alternative to, well, what gets called surveillance capitalism.
It does raise that question, though, doesn't it? Can you really build a big tech presence based on principles like that? Is it sustainable?
Well, Mozilla's still here, right?
Mhm.
And Diedrich points to concrete things they do.
Like the privacy policies you can actually understand.
Exactly. And blocking trackers by default in Firefox. That's not just a setting buried somewhere, it's the standard.
Yeah, it's a statement. Diedrich positions them almost like guardians.
Okay, so from Mozilla, who's next on his list?
He moves to Apple, and he's upfront saying, look, they're not perfect.
Which is fair. Refreshing, actually.
Totally. But he gives them credit for making some pretty significant moves, especially around consumer data and, yeah, potentially emotional data tied into things like health apps.
The big one was app tracking transparency, right? That definitely shook things up.
Oh, absolutely. Giving you that explicit choice. Do you want this app to track you across other apps and websites? That was huge.
And Diedrich also mentions their focus on encryption, for messages, health data, screen time info. It's becoming less of a background technical detail and more of a core feature.
Right. He sums it up nicely. In a world where data is the new oil, Apple has positioned privacy as the new premium.
The new premium. I like that. It suggests it's a value proposition, something people might actually pay for or choose a product for.
But does that make it mainstream? Or is it still kind of a luxury good, that level of privacy?
That's the ongoing debate, isn't it? Okay, so after Apple,
DuckDuckGo.
the search engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their whole thing is privacy. Diedrich highlights their core promise. No tracking your searches, no storing history long term, no building profiles to sell to advertisers.
Their motto kind of says it all. Privacy simplified.
It does. And Diedrich connects this to something he calls emotional sovereignty.
Emotional sovereignty. Tell me more about that.
It's this idea that you should have the freedom to just explore online, to wonder about things, ask questions, look stuff up, without being watched, as he puts it.
Okay, so it's about that private mental space, even when you're online,
Yeah.
not feeling like every curiosity is being logged and analyzed.
Exactly. You're not constantly self-censoring or wondering how your search history looks.
And that ties right back to Diedrich's initial checklist, doesn't it? DuckDuckGo nails consent by not needing it because they don't track in the first place.
Right. Minimal data collection is their default.
And it empowers users by just giving them that private experience directly. No hoops to jump through.
Okay, so next, Diedrich brings in an organization that isn't exactly building tech products in the same way. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF.
Yeah, the EFF.
Yeah.
The digital rights watchdogs. Makes sense to include them.
Definitely. Diedrich positions them as crucial advocates. They've been fighting for online privacy, free expression, transparency for decades now.
And importantly for this discussion, they're actively calling out problematic tech, including unethical uses of emotional AI. They're involved in legal challenges, policy work.
Giedrich uses a really strong analogy here. He says, if emotional data is the new currency, then EFF is the regulator we wish every platform had built in.
Wow, that's powerful. It really highlights their role as a check on corporate power and sometimes government overreach in the digital space.
It really makes you think, where would we be without groups like that pushing back, constantly reminding everyone about the ethical side?
Absolutely essential. Okay, who else does Diedrich spotlight?
This one's fascinating. Tim Berners-Lee,
The inventor of the World Wide Web.
the man himself. And Diedrich highlights his current work on the Solid project.
Right, Solid. That's his effort to kind of re-decentralize the web, give control back to users.
Exactly. To give individuals control over their own data, which explicitly includes things like emotional data if it's being collected. And the key, Diedrich stresses, is that this control is by design. It's not an opt-out you have to hunt for.
It's built into the architecture. The fact that the web's creator is now focused on fixing this data control problem, that says a lot.
It really does. It's a fundamental rethink. If
Yeah.
you look at Diedrich's criteria again, consent, data minimization, empowerment, Solid aims to tackle all of those by design. You decide where your data lives, who gets to see it.
A very different model from what we mostly have now.
Totally different. Now, before getting into the big picture, Diedrich also gives some honorable mentions, just quick shout-outs.
Okay, like who?
Let's see. Brave Browser for making privacy the default.
Right, similar principle to DuckDuckGo in some ways.
Yeah. Under Armour, he mentions them for being sort of early pioneers in handling biometric and maybe related emotional fitness data relatively responsibly, at least initially.
Interesting. Fitness data is definitely a sensitive area.
Signal, obviously, for its end-to-end encryption. ProtonMail and ProtonVPN for secure tools built on, ethical business models, not data harvesting.
Secure comms, yeah.
And Fathom Analytics, as an example of doing website analytics without invasive user tracking, showing it can be done differently.
So a pretty diverse group then. Browsers, search engines, advocacy groups, infrastructure projects, specific tools.
Exactly. It shows this isn't just one niche area. It's happening across the board in different ways, which kind of leads into Diedrich's broader reflections.
Okay, so pulling it all together, what's the main takeaway from Diedrich's perspective?
The core message is one of, well, possibility. He says it very clearly. It is possible to collect data and still honor dignity, to innovate without extracting. These examples are his proof.
So it's not an impossible dream.
Right. But then he pivots to the companies and builders who are exploring emotional AI right now, especially in tricky areas like HR, hiring, employee experience.
Yeah, that's where the stakes feel really high.
Definitely. He acknowledges the potential upsides, maybe spotting burnout risks early or identifying hidden biases in teams, creating, psychologically safer workplaces.
Sure, you can see the potential benefits if done right.
If done right. But he also sounds a clear warning about the dangers of getting it wrong.
Which are?
Things like treating feelings purely as metrics to be optimized, or creating systems that might subtly punish people for showing negative but authentic emotions, basically turning trust into a form of surveillance.
That's the real fear, isn't it? That it becomes another tool for control rather than support.
Precisely. And that leads him to lay out some key principles for anyone working in this space for ethical, effective computing.
Okay, let's hear them. These sound important.
First and foremost, consent is non-negotiable. Real consent. Ask clearly. Explain properly. Give people a genuine choice. No dark patterns. No burying it in terms of service.
Makes sense. What's next?
Transparency must be radical. Be incredibly clear about what data you're collecting, why you need it, how you'll use it, who sees it. Make it easy to understand.
Radical transparency. Okay.
Third, empowerment over evaluation. The goal should be to use this data to support people, help them understand themselves better, provide resources, not to judge them, rank them, or penalize them.
So using it for the person, not on the person.
Exactly. Fourth, boundaries matter. Only collect what's absolutely necessary for the stated purpose. Protect that data fiercely. And importantly, delete it when it's no longer needed. Don't hoard it forever.
Data minimization and security. Got it.
And finally, a really crucial one. Cultural and neurodivergent awareness is essential. Recognizing that emotions aren't expressed the same way by everyone across all cultures or for people with different neurotypes. Avoid building algorithms that define a single normal.
That's huge. because algorithms can so easily bake in biases if you're not careful.
Incredibly easily. So these 5 principles together form a kind of ethical framework Diedrich is proposing.
It feels like a really practical checklist for developers and companies.
I think so too. And his final thought kind of brings it all home.
What's that?
He argues that doing emotional AI ethically isn't just about, avoiding lawsuits or bad PR. It's fundamentally about enhancing what he calls emotional sovereignty.
Here's that term again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about building digital environments that respect our messy, beautiful, evolving humanness, as he puts it.
Wow. That's quite a vision.
It is. So looking back at this deep dive into Diedrich Byrne's emotional data do-gooders, we've seen these different examples: Mozilla, Apple, DuckDuckGo, EFF, Tim Berners-Lee, all pushing for better ways. What's the single biggest thing that stands out to you?
For me, it's simply the proof of concept. The fact that these organizations with very different models and goals are finding ways to prioritize ethics and privacy, it shows it's not just talk, it can be done. Innovation and dignity can coexist.
Yeah, that's hopeful. And I keep coming back to that question Diedrich challenges builders with. How does this feel to the person on the other side?
That simple empathy check.
It shifts everything, doesn't it? From just code and data points to actual human experience. Like Diedrich says near the end, the goal should be stronger emotions, not stronger algorithms.
Stronger emotions, fostering emotional well-being and understanding rather than just optimizing the tech.
Exactly. So maybe the final thought for you listening is, how can you just in your daily digital life be a bit more of an emotional data do-gooder? Think about the tools you choose, the permissions you grant, maybe even how you interact online.
Yeah, it's something for all of us to consider.
Yeah.
How do we contribute to that culture of emotional sovereignty?